The future, a world where the quest for truth has ended.
Do you believe in the supernatural, Mr. Vandarian?
Surprise! The Shader will bring hell to Earth for thousands of years. Shock Division, kill them all!
Spirit Blade, a full-cast audio drama. Download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade for free at spiritblade.com.
Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about the TNT series premiere of Snowpiercer? Stick around and find out! I really did not do any thinking ahead of time of what kind of music I was going to have there. So that's just what came out. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of the TNT series premiere of Snowpiercer. The synopsis on IMDb reads, set 7 years after the world has become a frozen wasteland, Snowpiercer centers on the remnants of humanity who inhabit a giant, perpetually moving train that circles the globe. Class warfare, social injustice, and the politics of survival are questioned in this riveting television adaptation. Adaptation of the original movie, which starred Chris Evans, which I did see years ago and thought it was interesting. I had some issues with the premise that carry over into this TV series, but I was definitely interested enough that I wanted to check this premiere out. Let's talk about what this animal basically is. It's a sci-fi dystopian drama with a significant dose of murder mystery thrown in. Basically, the world has frozen over for reasons that I won't go into, and the only people that have survived are on this like 1,000+ car train that is circling the globe. And they don't go into why, you know, being on a train saves them from the freezing. I mean, they don't go into that in depth and really explain that. They explain it in the movie. It has something to do with, you know, if they get still, then ice will just freeze over them and they'll just die or whatever, you know. But there are issues with that concept that I had with the movie. I'm just like, if they have this technology that creates a perpetually moving, perpetual motion engine, why couldn't they have a perpetual motion engine that powers some kind of underground facility or dome structure or something like that? I mean, I'm just thinking of all kinds of other scenarios apart from a train circling the globe that would conceptually make more sense. And the response to that, I think, from the intent of the creation is, listen, it's not about the concept holding up under scrutiny. It's about creating a concept that you can kind of, you know, be okay with, that serves the purpose of telling a story about class struggle, about the conflict between the haves and the have-nots, you know. And so that's where, you know, I think the movie, or the show, I should say, in this case as well, asks a lot of the viewer if you are someone that cares about concepts that make sense. You know, you have to be willing to kind of set some things aside and just accept this and understand, okay, this is a story that is prioritizing presenting a metaphor, you know. Now, how heavy-handed is that metaphor? I mean, I think that there's a good amount of just kind of normal drama thrown in, but the metaphor is ever present. It's always about, the core thing is always about the struggle between the haves and the have-nots, you know. It's the wealthy and working class who are ticketed passengers that are supposed to be on there, either as servants that are helping the train move and operate the way it should, or the wealthy who just bought tickets to kind of live there, you know. It's them versus the poor boarders who got on at the very last second before the train left, and now the train's been running for over 6 years, and the poor that got on the train at the last second, they boarded very violently. They forced themselves on. There was killing involved, and now they are still killing to, you know, as you know, by way of, you know, trying to bring about an uprising so that they can you know, join the first class passengers or the wealthy or whatever in all of the opulence that they enjoy. I mean, they're not expressly stating we want the opulence, and I don't think they necessarily are. In fact, they don't really talk about, you know, in this episode, well, what would you do if you could break out of your tail section, because they keep it closed off? You know, each car has has doors that close very tightly, you know, and so they have them sealed off effectively in the tail cars. What would they do? What's their plan to bring about a fair society? Well, none of that is expressed. And so right now you just have this very volatile environment where the kind of like the ideals of each group are not really expressed as far as like, okay, what do you think is the right way for all of us to live? The way that they're presenting the wealthy is mostly one note. Unfortunately, there are some indications of humanity in some of the characters, but there's not a lot of gradation represented in at least most of this episode that would suggest that those that are ticketed, some of them might actually care about the tailors or the tailies, or I think it's tailors, I can't remember, but the people that force themselves on and are living in the back in poverty. And likewise, there's not really anything said from those that are the tailors trying to get their way into the rest of the train cars for like what they think is fair, and they're just like so desperate, they're just wanting to force themselves. So what I want in a premise like this, if it's going to be carried for a long-term series, is for us to get away from the extremes being the only things represented and see more and more on both sides, among both tailors and ticketed passengers. I want to see those who realize, you know, what my people are doing is not right. You know, on the tailor side, being violent and all that kind of stuff, and just being so angry and letting that decide all their decisions. That's not the way to go. And on the ticketed side, I want them to see that I want characters to show up, even among the very wealthy, who say, this isn't right. We should be seeking to change the way we govern ourselves, you know, because recognize that we are a new government, you know. And so I'm hoping it'll be important to me to enjoy this series long term, that we very soon in the next few episodes start seeing some characters that at least show potential, that they are currently going to be reasonable, or they will grow further and further as the series progresses into people that want to be reasonable, you know. I think that a concept like this, if you just keep two extremes being represented, it doesn't have staying power, you know, because it's overly simplistic, you know. Let's see here. I do think it lays the groundwork for some character arcs in a couple characters. I don't want to give very many details, you know, because I think that the pilot is worth watching, and there are some minor reveals about characters that are just kind of enjoyable to see unfold throughout the pilot. I think that they're setting up this murder mystery that's going to be extended at least probably over half of the first season, or maybe the entire first season. Hopefully not the whole series. I would think that it's going to have to change and evolve in its plot structure and what the main plot is. I think it's certainly setting itself up for more world building, because it's showing us throughout the pilot how things are and just the way the world is. But I think it's also going to be showing us more of the different facets of how this society runs based on the constraints of being in this, you know, train, and maybe also why it works the way that it does. I think that they do offer some room for some moral complexity. You know, there's a point made. Well, no, I won't go into the details on one of the points that's being made, but all I'll say is there's one scene where, like, one character's like, hey, we want this. You know, one of the tailors says, we want this. And another person says, well, it's not that simple, and here's why, you know. And so I think that there is going to be room for moral complexity, you know, rather than just say, well, the tailors should just be allowed to come into the rest of the train and just do whatever they want and run free and stuff. I think they are saying it is more complex than that. So I have hope that the show will go where it needs to go, but, you know, we'll see if that hope is founded or not. I'm not sure how I feel about the premise, and if it's going to have enough in its concept to build an entire series on. It's an odd, very interesting premise, and it worked well for one movie that showed up, existed for 2 hours, and kind of made its points and then was over, you know, and had a definitive ending, which the movie did. I'm not sure how that gets stretched out into a series, and so I'm curious and somewhat skeptical about how they will do that over more than like 2 seasons. I don't know. Can they really stay on the train and keep things interesting for more than 2 seasons? I don't know. So as far as the cast goes, Jennifer Connelly gets top billing. She is head of sort of like a public relations branch of the train, you know, which is owned by this wealthy businessman that they refer to, but is not seen in this episode. And she is kind of like the head representation of the authority, you know, on the train. But her role, since this is all owned privately, this train is owned privately, is that of sort of a flight attendant, like a head flight attendant. She's dressed very much like a flight attendant. There are other flight attendants dressed like her, train attendants, I don't know what you call them. They have an official name, but I can't remember what it is. And she also is the attendant that makes all the announcements and says, like, at the sound of the tone, the time will be exactly 8 o'clock, you know, and we have some turbulent track coming up, and we recommend that you brace. You know, all these different little pleasant public announcements. She is the voice for that. In addition to, you know, walking among the passengers in the cars and stuff, and dealing with passenger complaints when the sauna isn't right, or some other thing from that rich people would want, you know, isn't right, you know. Then she kind of helps interface with them. She's at the top of the totem pole. Most of the episode, she seems very buttoned up, although not so extremely that I don't see little bits of humanity in her. I think her performance, though subtle, does show that there is a human being that is not beyond reason. She does seem to be a thinking, rational, considerate human being, but still very buttoned up until the last scene that we see her in, which I won't say anything about, except that we see a different side entirely of her personality and her demeanor. And that comes almost at the really at the very end of the episode, and it went a long way. That small little reveal of this other side of her went a long way to make me think, I want to tune in for more of this. I want to see more of her character and what they reveal and how she maybe progresses and what kind of arc they might have for her. David Diggs plays Andre Layton. I don't know him from anything else, unless I would recognize him maybe more if he had his beard and hair all much, much shorter. I don't know. Anyway, he is a former homicide detective in this, and he's one of the tailors, and he is asked to help ticketed passengers resolve a murder investigation, you know. And so he's kind of given access to the other parts of the ship. He fits in well as kind of like a man of the people who's in this unique situation, who's being offered, you know, a taste of some of that opulence, you know, but at the same time doesn't want to betray his people. He is a passionate revolutionary, but he's also not so passionate and angry that he just isn't able to connect and relate to people on a one-on-one basis, you know, which I appreciate. So I'm interested to see more of his character, but based on what they've shown me already, you know, it's enough to say that, okay, yeah, it's significant for me to say, oh, I want to see more, you know, of his character. One more actor I'll mention is Allison Wright. She has been in Sneaky Pete in that Amazon series. She was in multiple seasons of The Americans, and she's one of the other stewardesses or attendants or whatever they are. And she does very little in this ep to really show what she's capable of, but Allison Wright, in my book, is just one of the best actresses in television in recent years. She's very versatile. I've really enjoyed her in everything I've seen her in, and I am hopeful and expectant that they will leverage her a lot more, because she can do so much more than she did in this opening episode. But she's very present in this episode, which makes me think, okay, she's going to be a major part of the ongoing cast, which I totally approve of. The rest of the supporting cast are all solid as far as I'm concerned, and some familiar faces as well from other dramas, and that gives me confidence that they are casting real actors for this series, and this is going to be a show that I, as someone who cares about subtext delivered through good actor performances, that can really draw me into characters and character arcs. This show has a pretty good likelihood of delivering that kind of experience for me. Now, as far as the stunts and visuals go, I'll just briefly say that the sets I thought are all solid. All the practical stuff was very solid, and so I don't really have any complaints there. But all the digital effects, which admittedly are few, definitely to my eye looked more like network television, you know, ad-supported type of quality, rather than the more premium minimum quality of effects that we would see in like Netflix shows or Amazon Prime shows, stuff like that. That's a paid network service. So it's not a big deal because there's not many exterior shots of the wintry world and the train traveling through it. But you know, it is noteworthy, I thought. Now, as far as themes, is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this thing that might bring about some worthwhile thought or conversation? I think definitely. They're definitely going to be dealing with the class struggle, and that really doesn't interest me as much because I'm not as interested in politics as I am in the undergirding moral assumptions and philosophies that those systems grow out of. You know, I'm more interested in those core moral issues, but I do think that those are going to be a major part of this, in the same way that they're part of a show like The Walking Dead, where you have these characters in a very dire and extreme status quo environment, and we're seeing what moral choices they're going to make in this environment, where the normal rules of society are thrown out the window. But, you know, in theory, our rules of society are based on our higher moral values, and what each of us believes to be objective moral truths. And so that's what I'm waiting to see emerge, is for characters to say, okay, yeah, that's the rules of this train line or the rules of the governments we were once a part of, but there is a higher rule, there's a higher moral authority. Maybe they will appeal to God or just some kind of like humanitarian type of, you know, philosophy. I don't know what they might appeal to, but I think that there is certainly opportunity there, and I suspect they'll take advantage of that. Are there any governing absolutes for any characters in this world? There are references to religious belief among the Taylors, who are praying specifically to God, you know. And so, I'm curious to see if there will be any references to spiritual religious beliefs, monotheistic beliefs among the ticketed passengers, among the wealthy, or is that just something that's going to belong to the poorer class? You know, so it'll be interesting to see kind of how that's represented in the show going forward. Even though we didn't get as much as I wanted in the pilot, I'm hopeful for various shades in the spectrum of good and bad, like I said earlier. Now, I have no idea what your tastes are in TV shows, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Pater, watch this one on the TNT website. I mean, you don't have cable, but in this instance, you don't need it to at least watch the pilot. You know, I don't know if they're going to keep posting every episode on that website every week, but at least check out the pilot, because it'll be worth your time. It'll feel standard in some respects, and for a lot of it, you'll just kind of watch, but not really be hooked. But by the end, you will be surprised at wanting to watch episode 2. If the website doesn't continue posting episodes, however, it's not going to feel like a real loss to you. It's got a very interesting start, but it is not must-see TV for you yet. We'll see what happens after maybe 1 or 2 more episodes. Now, it doesn't have an MPAA rating, but it has a TV rating of TVM, with the letters L and V, I presume, for language and violence. I would also put in nudity in there. It's got a PG-13 level of nudity in showing a woman's backside while she's swimming around for some reason naked in a tank of water. And it, of course, has language and violence and blood. So definitely kind of a PG-13 equivalent, I would say. All right now I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate. I'm not sure where my tonality is going there. Brian Franklin, Drew Rubb, Gabriel Stinson, J.D. Myers, Lee Bray, Olin D. Branham, Stefan Kramick, and Winston Crutchfield. Thank you for supporting me, and SPP, and CGC, and now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Want to hear your name in song? Check out our page on Patreon. All right, those are my thoughts. Love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that notification bell to stay connected to this content. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for all their support, especially during difficult times like this. You can get info about the benefits of joining, and there are many, over at patreon.com/SpiritBlade Productions. Then, of course, I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.
The future, a world where the quest for truth has ended.
Do you believe in the supernatural, Mr. Vandarians?
Surprise! The Shader will bring hell to Earth for thousands of years. Shock Division, kill them all!
Spirit Blade, a full cast audio drama. Download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade for free at spiritblade.com.